welcome to another episode of Data Dialogues. And today we'll be chatting about data, privacy, and targeting. So with me today, well, first of all, my name is Larissa Bedgood, and I head marketing at Porch Group Media. And with me today is Michelle Taves and Kristen Jones. Would you both like to introduce yourselves really quickly?
Absolutely. My name is Michelle Taves. Happy to be here, Larissa. I am the GM for our marketing and data division here over at Porch.
And Kristen?
Yes, good morning, Larissa. I'm happy to be here. I'm the marketing manager here at Porch Group Media.
Well, cool. I have done several podcasts in the past with both of you and always love this. So this is the first time that the three of us have been on together. So without further ado, let's talk privacy.
Yay!
Yeah, I know. One of the things that I've always loved the kind of like, it's like the privacy paradox. You know, consumers want to protect their data, but they need to kind of give up their data at the same time in order to get personalization. And that's really what we're going to chat about today is how, you know, consumers, the only way that they can get, you know, levels of personalization is if they share their data with companies. And I'm talking about, hey, this is my birthday, and they're sharing that data willingly so that that company can then send them, you know, a birthday surprise, a $10 off coupon, whatever, which I always look forward to my Ulta birthday surprises myself. But I think it's so interesting because some of the recent studies that we've seen, or I've seen, is that consumers feel like they're losing control of their data. But, you know, really that's the catch-22, or is it catch-20? What is it, catch-22? That you have to give it up to get something in return. So I'd love like both of your thoughts and how you see that.
I'll go first, and maybe Kristen, if you want to layer on. I think it's really interesting. I agree. And I think especially probably 10, 15 years ago, people really were guarding their policy. You got a lot of information, a lot of new regulations came out. And if you fast forward to today, a lot of those new regulations actually almost created the opposite behavior that consumers wanted, right? Because what consumers really want, at least in the ad industry, is that they want to be targeted at the time that they're looking for a particular product and the channel that you can find them. That's what they care about most. And in order to be able to do that successfully, you have to know a little bit about the consumer, right? In order to be able to target the proper ad, almost like what you said, if for Ulta, if they don't know your birthday, it's really impossible for them to send you that birthday coupon, right? And so consumers have found as time went on that that type of information and that there's benefit in sharing their information. So I believe that what consumers really want is they just want the control to be able to share the information with and who they want to, and they want to eliminate other people, spammers, right, getting their information for products that they're just simply not interested in. And so I think that is the problem for us to solve that you really need to dig into when you talk about consumer privacy.
Yeah, I love that point. And Kristen, I know when we were prepping for this podcast, you found some really good stats. Some of the stats that I think are really interesting, Michelle, to that point is, so some 73% of adults, this is according to a study by Ipsos, they say that they don't have enough control of how companies are using their data. And I think that it is really about being transparent as a brand. So when a consumer doesn't feel they have control, you know, we as marketers need to be very transparent and one, how we are using data, two, getting consent in the first place. Do you as a consumer want to share your data with me as the brand? Do you want to share your birthday, for example, in order to get a percentage off or a freebie? You know, that really needs to be up to the consumer. We can't just assume that they're willing to share or want to share their data in return. I think a lot of times people do, but we have to just be transparent in how we're collecting data.
Yes, I totally agree. I also just on that point, I think that consumers also have to be a little bit more educated on how they share their data. right? For example, if you're playing your favorite game, right, on your phone, very many times it is, am I allowed to track you always when you're playing their game or not at all? Many consumers don't really read through the privacy statements. They don't understand when they say, oh, yeah, you can track me all the time, right? They don't understand what that means, because what that means is that they're going to start getting a whole bunch of banner advertising based on where they're going. And they just
Right.
gave consent for that. So I think some of it too is consumer education. The brands can be transparent and have privacy statements and do everything legally that they're supposed to do. But the consumer also needs to have the benefit of the education too, and understand what they're opting into and what they're opting out, right? I almost wonder sometimes if brands make it just so complicated so that the consumer doesn't have true insight into what they're opting into.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point. That actually brings to mind. So, have you seen those games, on Facebook or different things where you're like, okay, here, what is your rap name? What is the street that you were born on? What is the name of your first pet? Okay, yes, I know that that's also, you're sharing away password information potentially, but anything like that is also a way that you are unknowingly maybe sharing your data. So again, yeah, to your point, Michelle, be aware of what you are sharing in the first place. Michelle, Kristen, did you have a thought there?
Well, I was just going to add on to what Michelle was saying, where it's like maybe brands like are making it really complicated for like some consumers to understand like how their data is being used. I think terms of service or terms of use agreements are a great example of that. Nobody in their sane mind is probably going to read all of that. They're just
Right.
ready at that point to like sign up for the app or whatever it is. So I think it's just like as marketers, obviously, like we understand like how we're tracked on the web and how our behaviors, like, serving up the ads that we see. But I think, yeah, to Michelle's point earlier, there is like a lack of education, I think, across the board for like your average consumer that doesn't work in marketing or anything. I know my parents, for one, too, are very oblivious to the way that it works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So quick question for both of you. When you go to a website and it asks about cookie privacies, do you opt into all cookies, or do you, only essential? It has those ways that you can opt in as a consumer.
For me, it depends on the website. To be honest, if it's a website that I visit frequently, I opt into all. But if it's a website that I'm a first time user on and I'm just not familiar with the website or the brand that I'm interacting with, I'll usually block them. But then what happens is that you block content. And so there's just consequences, to not accepting cookies for sure.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because that goes to show like you have control over the data that you're sharing with companies. And from what you're saying, it's like if you know a brand, if they've established trust, you are willing to share more data. If it's somebody that you don't really know who they are and they haven't established any trust with you yet, or you're not familiar with them, you're not as willing to share data. And I think that's really where we're headed, is that as brands, we need to establish trust and credibility with consumers today, and prove that, yes, if you give me your information, we're going to use it in a responsible way and target you with ads or offers that maybe you are looking for. That actually kind of brings to mind another point here that I'm looking at. So according to some other research, I believe this was by Ipsos, more than 7 in 10 consumers agree that they're willing to subscribe to email newsletters, as an example, from a brand or store if they get discounts on products. And roughly 6 in 10 are willing to subscribe to text messages for discounts on products. So again, if they're going to be targeted with something of value, they're willing to opt in to more channels and be willing to subscribe to your offers.
Yep. Just on that point, I think one of the mistakes that brands make is that once they get that opt-in, so say you opt in for an email newsletter, all of a sudden they're using that opt-in to send text messages to you about different products, which is fine if there's a halfway decent offer on it. But when they start sending it every day, right, or like 5 times a week, I think that it gets to be too much, and then they end up getting people to opt out. So I do think that brands have to be really conscientious on the timing, right? That once they get an opt-in, you have to protect that opt-in. Like, I think so many brands really think, oh, I got the opt-in, that's really what I was out there doing. But they need to cherish it, right? They need to treat it with respect. They need to not all of a sudden just start blasting the heck out of it or using it inappropriately. That's the quickest way to get someone to opt out.
I actually have some personal experience to share with that. I had purchased a product off of Instagram, and I'll just say it was a makeup brand. I won't say the name of the brand, but it encouraged you to sign up for a subscription to like keep getting your makeup. And I was like, okay, fine. I really just wanted to buy it once to see if I liked it, but then I ended up signing up for the subscription. As soon as I signed up, I was getting like 5 texts a day. Like, I was getting emails, and I didn't refill my makeup subscription, but eventually it got to a point where they would send emails with subject lines that were really sneaky. For example, it'd be like, your trial update is confirmed. It would have nothing to do with like my account. I was thinking, oh goodness, something happened with my account, like where they have my credit card and they're gonna, like charge me for an upgrade that I didn't ask for, driving me to go into the account and check on things. It was just, I was done with them after that. The way that they communicated with me, I was like, yeah.
I think almost what Larissa was saying at the beginning, right? They weren't transparent, right? They misused your information. They had a lack of transparency. And then what did it result in? You probably will never buy anything from them again, right? So it's more than just the initial setup of getting the information. We have to continuously be transparent.
Yeah, and it's like any relationship, really. It's, as brands, we want to protect that consumer relationship and treat it, how would you want to be treated? You don't want to be like blasted continuously with messages. Once we build up some trust, then you can continue with the right messaging. So I think this is really talks to what both of you were just saying, Kristen and Michelle. So here's some research by a company called Marigold, and nearly 4 in 10 consumers say they've gotten irrelevant offers from consumers, from brands in the past 6 months. So when that continues, you continue to get, really bad targeted messages or things that are completely irrelevant, or Kristen, in your case, just sneaky. You've completely lost that consumer at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just reflecting on that experience. I was really upset to the point where I couldn't delete that account. Like, I couldn't get rid of it. I had to write to them and I was like, please delete my account and take me out of your database. Like, I had gotten to that point. So you definitely don't want to be misusing that trust, or, sending irrelevant offers, or using misleading subject lines even, like getting people to like worry. I don't think that's obviously not a winning strategy for customer retention. So,
well, and it's marketing waste, right? Like a lot of brands I know right now, we're really focused on using their marketing budget to the best that they can. So think of how much marketing waste they have out there. They're spending money on all of those channels, on all of that distribution, just to get you angry, right? Like they're getting the opposite result that they're really looking to do. And so that's why timing is just so important. I know we talk about test all the time, right? Test to see what's going to work. You have to test to see what's too much. and test to see what's too little. I mean, you would think that daily, especially 4 or 5 times daily, like that would be, it would be apparent that that's too much, right? But sometimes brands just really, they're so focused on getting their name out there, trying to get that next order, that they kind of forget about the customer experience. And we've got to make sure that we understand that we're here for the consumer experience. Like, we're here to help consumers find products and services that they're truly interested in finding, right? Like, and the only time that marketing is beneficial is when a consumer purchases or contacts that brand, right? And so it's almost, they're spending market waste, they're wasting their budget and wasting their time, and losing at the same time.
Is there a type of offer that both of you respond to best? Some of the research shows that the top offers that consumers respond to are, one, discounts and coupon codes. So 89% of respondents for the Marigold study say that they're very likely or somewhat likely to engage with messaging that provides discounts and coupons. Loyalty program promotions, 86% will respond to those. I know for me, I always like something free. Again, going back to my example of Ulta, I'm a loyalty member, and I will buy not so much based on a discount code, but when they offer like a free sample kit. So anytime I get free samples for what my interests are, that's what makes me act, for sure.
Me too. I also really like the buy ones, get one free, right? Especially if it's something that I buy frequently. I like those a lot too.
Yes. Kristen, is there a certain offer that you respond to best?
Yeah, I definitely love the BOGO, especially if I'm grocery shopping. I'll keep my eye out for those. Good example for me too is like CVS is sending me coupons like pretty regularly, like 30% off this, 30% off that. And it's always stuff that I need because they have like my purchase history tied to my rewards account. So I respond really well to like reward program offers, exclusive deals, coupons, things like that. And also love Starbucks. So of course I like to keep an eye out for when I earn enough stars to get a free drink. And yeah.
Yes, I agree with that one. I think we're all Starbucks lovers here.
Yes, coffee in general.
Well, I think that, are there any last thoughts that either of you want to share on the privacy landscape? I think this is a really interesting, I'm sure we'll have future conversations about it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, let's just remember, I guess, a few points. The consumer should put in a little bit of effort to be educated also, right? The brand should be 100% transparent on what they're going to do with the data, you know, and how they're going to use it for the benefit of the consumer. Brands, we often talk about how we're going to use it for the benefit of the brand, but we're really here to serve the consumers, right? And so, and then just stay up with your regulations, like understand what the privacy regulations are and make sure that as a company that you're abiding by them.
I love that. I think that's like a perfect way to wrap up. We think as brands, you know, we think about what can it do for us, but at the end of the day, you're right. It's really about how we can personalize it for the consumer. And that's what data-driven marketing is about targeting consumers and in the best way possible. So I love that. I think it was a super interesting discussion with the privacy landscape continuously evolving. I'm sure we'll be hopping on probably sooner than later, another discussion. But thank you both for joining. I think this was something worth sharing, and we will continue the conversation. So thank you all for joining our podcast today, and stay tuned for another Data Dialogues podcast coming at you soon. Thanks all.